Before we step together into one of the darkest and most terrifying cases to ever haunt America, let's take a moment. Stories like this are not just entertainment. They are mirrors reflecting the deepest shadows of the human soul and the strength of resilience when faced with unimaginable horror. If you're ready to join me in exploring a world where evil hides in the shadows of familiar streets, where horrifying truths are revealed piece by piece, and where the line between man and monster blurs, then hit that subscribe button right now so you won't miss a single chapter of this chilling story. Because once we begin, there will be no turning back. Now take a deep breath. We are about to enter the world of the Obsidian Painter. The autumn chill had bitten deep into the city, stripping the trees bare and leaving the urban landscape stark, vulnerable. It was a fitting backdrop for the darkness that began to seep into the foundations of daily life, unnoticed at first, then impossible to ignore. Detective Miles Corbin, a man whose face was a roadmap of every grim discovery he'd ever made, stood at the perimeter of Hawthorne Park, the yellow tape a flimsy border against the encroaching dread. The victim, Elena Rodriguez, lay at the base of the weeping willow, its skeletal branches like grasping fingers above her. Her clothes were pristine, meticulously arranged, her dark hair fanned out like a halo. But it was her skin that held the eye a pallid, almost translucent white, completely devoid of blood. Her eyes, wide open, stared sightlessly at the overcast sky, betraying no horror, only an unnerving stillness. It wasn't the violence that struck Corbin, it was the precision. Cause of death still pending, Miles, Officer Miller, a young, nervous beat cop, reported, clutching a notepad. Me says no obvious entry wounds, no signs of struggle. Clean, Corbin grunted, pulling his trench coat tighter against the wind. Clean? Nobody dies clean like this. Not unless someone put a hell of a lot of effort into making it look that way. He'd seen plenty of murderers, plenty of depravity. But this felt different, felt staged. The park was usually bustling, a lifeline for the city's heart. But today, a morbid silence had fallen, broken only by the distant wail of sirens and the hushed, respectful movements of crime scene technicians. The news outlets, already circling like vultures, had dubbed the killer the Obsidian Painter by the time the second body was discovered a week later. Mark Henderson, a renowned local architect, was found in his own avant-garde loft apartment, perched precariously on a minimalist sculpture, his body artfully twisted, his features contorted into a silent scream that somehow transcended sound. Like Elena, he was utterly drained of blood. The method was identical, the presentation subtly evolved. It was as if the killer was refining their technique, moving from a rustic canvas in the park to a sleek, modern gallery. Corbin felt a cold knot tightening in his gut. This wasn't a random act of savagery. This was deliberate, calculated, and terrifyingly ambitious. He tried to focus on the tangible. A lack of forced entry, no struggle, no fingerprints, no DNA. Nothing but the macabre tableau left behind. It was a ghost of a crime, a murder that left no trace but the void where life once was. "We need help," Captain Thorne had conceded, his face a mask of frustration. "FBI's sending a profiler. Some hotshot from Quantico." Corbin internally groaned. Profilers. He'd worked with them before, sharp, theoretical, often detached. He preferred concrete evidence, tangible threats. His skepticism was a shield he'd honed over 30 years on the force, a defense against the chaos and senselessness of the world. He'd seen too many victims, too many lost souls, and too many cases that simply went cold, leaving scars on his own psyche. The recent passing of his wife, a quiet, lingering illness, had only deepened the fissures in his resolve, leaving him with an even more pronounced weariness for the abstract. He just wanted to catch the bastard. Special Agent Evelyn Reed arrived 2 days later, a stark contrast to the gritty, smoke-filled atmosphere of the precinct. She was young, perhaps early 30s, with sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to take in every detail, every subtle shift in the room's energy. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun, her movements precise, almost economical. She carried herself with an air of quiet confidence that bordered on aloofness. "Detective Corbin," she said, extending a hand that was surprisingly firm. Her voice was low, melodic, but utterly devoid of warmth. "Special Agent Reed. Thank you for having me." Corbin merely grunted, shaking her hand curtly. "Let's cut to the chase, Agent. What do you see?" Reed didn't flinch. She spent the next 2 hours poring over crime scene photos, detailed reports, and the sparse forensic analysis, her silence unnerving. Corbin watched her, half expecting some jargon-laden explanation of Oedipal complexes or narcissistic tendencies. Instead, she methodically highlighted certain elements in the photos with a red pen, the precise angle of Elena's head, the way Mark's fingers were splayed, the subtle, almost imperceptible shift in the light source in each scene that made the victims appear unnaturally radiant. "This isn't about rage, Detective," she finally said, looking up, her eyes piercing. "It's about control, and it's about art." Corbin scoffed. "Art? He's a psychopath, Agent. He's killing people. And he's creating a narrative," Reed countered calmly, gesturing to the overlaid images on the smartboard. "Look at the progression. Elena was an innocent, a blank canvas. Mark was a statement, critique. The environments aren't random. Hawthorne Park, a place of nature and peace. Henderson's Loft, a monument to human creation and ambition. Our killer is making a statement about life, about death, about the very essence of human experience. And he's doing it through the absolute dehumanization of his victims, transforming them into objects, props in his morbid theater." Her words sent a shiver down Corbin's spine, not because they were unbelievable, but because they sounded terrifyingly plausible. "You think he's got a message?" "Every artist has a message," Reed replied, her gaze distant, as if she were seeing the killer's twisted mind unfurl before her. "And this artist is just beginning his exhibition. There's an underlying theme emerging, something tied to appearance versus reality, beauty versus decay. The complete exsanguination. It strips them bare, leaving only the form. It's almost a purification, in his own deranged mind." The phone on Captain Thorne's desk rang, jarring them both from their grim contemplation. Thorne answered, his face paling as he listened. He hung up, slowly, his eyes meeting Corbin's. "Third one," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Downtown, the old Clock Tower Plaza. A street musician, found propped up against the statue of the city's founder. Violin still in hand. Same MO." A wave of dread washed over Corbin. Reed's words echoed in his mind. He's just beginning his exhibition. The Obsidian painter was not just a killer. He was a performance artist, and the city was his unwilling audience, plunging headfirst into a darkness it had never known. The canvas of fear was expanding, and no one knew whose face would appear on it next. The city's heart, once vibrant, now beat with a terrifying, rhythmic drum of panic. The city had become a ghost of its former self. Streetlights cast long, lonely shadows on empty sidewalks. The once vibrant heart of the metropolis now beat with a faint, anxious pulse. Weeks had bled into months since the first discovery, and the Obsidian painter had struck 4 more times, each new exhibit more audacious, more chilling than the last. The public's initial shock had curdled into a pervasive fear that hung in the air like a perpetual mist. Detective Corbin felt the weight of it all. The pressure from above was immense, the public's cries for justice growing louder, sharper. He'd lost count of the sleepless nights, fueled by stale coffee and a gnawing frustration. He found himself increasingly relying on Agent Reed's insights, even if her clinical detachment sometimes grated on his nerves. "He's evolving," Reed observed one grim morning, standing before a wall covered with crime scene photos, maps, and intricate web diagrams that looked like the ravings of a madman, yet were meticulously organized. Each victim, each location, tells a piece of his story. The street musician was in front of the city founder's statue, a challenge to authority, to the city's self-image. The university professor, found in the archives, meticulously arranged among ancient texts, a statement on the fragility of knowledge. And the latest, a young social media influencer, posed in her lavish penthouse, a critique of modern vanity. Corbin slammed his fist on the table, the sound echoing in the silent room. So, he's a damn philosopher? We need a name, agent, not a dissertation on his twisted worldview. Reed turned, her expression unreadable. His worldview is the key, detective. He's not just killing, he's communicating. Every victim, every pose, every subtle detail is a word in his sentence. We need to understand the grammar of his madness. His victimology isn't about class, race, or even gender directly. It's symbolic. Each victim represents something he despises or, perhaps, something he envies. They are all, in their own way, outwardly successful, outwardly beautiful, or accomplished individuals in the public eye. So, he's got a grudge against success? Corbin mumbled, running a hand through his thinning hair. That narrows it down to half the city. No, Reed said softly, her eyes tracing a line between the victims on the map. It's deeper. It's about perception. Their public persona versus a hidden reality. The blood, the lack of it. It strips away the superficial, leaving only the pure form. He's purifying them, in his own mind, of their perceived sins or hypocrisies related to their public image. Corbin looked at the images again, a new perspective dawning. Elena, the innocent waitress, perhaps symbolizing the fragility of purity. Mark, the architect, representing the hollow ambition of grand design. The musician, the illusion of harmonious art. The professor, the corrupted pursuit of knowledge. The influencer, the superficiality of modern fame. There was a horrifying, perverse logic to it. The investigation had been a frustrating labyrinth. Leads vanished. Witnesses offered vague descriptions of a shadowy figure, always moving in the periphery. Forensics remained stubbornly silent, yielding no usable DNA, no fingerprints, no telltale fibers. The killer was a ghost, leaving only their chilling art behind. Reed had been working tirelessly, often well into the night, her mind an engine of analysis. She had developed a psychological profile so detailed it felt as if she were talking about a long-lost acquaintance. Highly intelligent, likely above average. Organized, meticulous, not impulsive. Plans extensively. Likely someone with a high degree of control in their professional and personal life. Someone who can blend in, who doesn't draw attention. Possibly in a field that deals with aesthetics, history, or perhaps even mortuary sciences. Someone who understands presentation, symbolism, and the human form. Corbin respected her begrudgingly. Her mind was a formidable weapon, cutting through the noise that often clouded his own, more instinctual approach. He found himself sketching out geographical patterns on the map while she analyzed behavioral ones. He found the back alleys and forgotten corners of the city. She found the hidden motives in the killer's mind. They were two halves of a fractured whole, trying to piece together a monster. One evening, as Corbin was about to leave, Reed called him back to the evidence room. She stood over a microscopic image projected onto a screen, her brow furrowed in concentration. Look at this, detective. He peered at the image. It was a section of Elena Rodriguez's forearm, taken from one of the initial, more thorough forensic examinations that had yielded nothing. Now, under enhanced UV light and magnification, something almost imperceptible shimmered. What is it? He asked, straining his eyes. It's a trace, Reed explained, her voice hushed. A pigment, almost invisible to the naked eye, embedded in the epidermal layers. It's not blood, not ink, not cosmetic. Unique. I cross-referenced it with rare art supplies, historical restoration materials, even obscure industrial paints. Came back with one match. A specific kind of pigment called obsidian black, a synthetic mineral compound that was briefly popular with a very niche group of avant-garde artists in the late 90s, early 2000s, known for its deep, non-reflective quality and its ability to absorb light, making surfaces appear almost like a void. It was discontinued due to cost and difficulty in application, but a small boutique art supplier in the city still had a limited stock. catering to a very particular clientele. Corbin felt a jolt, a real lead, something tangible. Why wasn't this found before? It only becomes visible under specific, high-intensity UV light, Reed said, her voice laced with a triumph she rarely allowed herself. It's almost like a signature the killer wanted to be found, but only by someone who knew precisely where and how to look. A taunt, a challenge. They visited the art supplier, a dusty, eccentric place nestled in a forgotten corner of the city's old arts district. The elderly owner, a man named Bartholomew Barty Croft, recognized the pigment immediately. Ah, obsidian black, a moody, difficult medium, only a few of my most particular clients ever asked for it. Most artists prefer to work with light, not absorb it. He rummaged through old ledgers, his fingers stained with decades of paint. He produced a name, scrawled in faded ink, Adrian Thorne. He was quite the talent, had a show or two at the local galleries back then. Intense fellow, always talking about how art needed to reflect the true darkness beneath the surface of beauty. And he seemed obsessed with perfect forms and ultimate expression through abstraction. He bought a large quantity of obsidian black from me, almost 20 years ago. Corbin's blood ran cold. Thorne, the name echoed, a spectral whisper. He remembered a Captain Thorne, retired, a man he'd respected. Could there be a connection? Did he ever finish his masterpiece? Reed asked, her voice barely audible. Barty Croft chuckled, a dry, reedy sound. He disappeared, after a particularly brutal critique of his last exhibition. Said he was going to find a purer form of expression. Never saw him again. But he always said, true art leaves a lasting impression, even if it's etched in the shadows. Corbin and Reed exchanged a look of chilling realization. The obsidian painter had left more than an impression. He had left a path of bloodless bodies, an exhibition of fear. And now they finally had a name. The crimson thread, meticulously woven through the killer's macabre art, had finally led them to a potential weaver, a figure lost to time, but now terrifyingly resurrected. The address Barty Croft had given them led to a forgotten corner of the city, a derelict warehouse district choked with ivy and urban decay. Adrian Thorne, the ghost of an artist, had chosen his lair, well, a place no one would think to look, a canvas of forgotten dreams. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of chemicals, dust, and something else, something metallic and faintly sweet, the lingering echo of death. The warehouse was Thorne's atelier, his gallery, his twisted sanctuary. Canvases, not of paint, but of human skin, adorned the walls in photographs. Surgical tools lay gleaming on stainless steel tables. And in the center, a large, ornate easel held not a painting, but a chilling, life-sized mannequin, meticulously posed, replicating one of the victims. This was where he practiced, where he perfected his gruesome craft. Reed walked through the space, her face pale, a silent horror etched into her features. He wasn't just a painter, detective, she whispered, her voice strained. He was a sculptor, a taxidermist, a philosopher of death. These journals. She pointed to a stack of leather-bound books on a workbench. Corbin picked one up, his fingers trembling slightly. The cramped, elegant script detailed Thorne's artistic philosophy. It spoke of a profound disillusionment with the superficiality of modern society, the false beauty that masked decay. He believed he was performing an act of purification, stripping away the corrupted blood to reveal the pure form beneath, a form that truly reflected the emptiness and hypocrisy he perceived in the world. Each victim was a meticulously chosen symbol, a living critique. His disappearance 2 decades ago was not a retreat, but a calculated immersion into obscurity, a period of gestation, of refining his medium. He's been here the whole time, Corbin muttered, a cold rage building inside him. Watching, planning, perfecting his depravity. Reed's eyes landed on a faded photograph tucked into one of the journals. It showed a younger Adrian Thorne, standing beside a beautiful woman, a triumphant smile on his face. The caption read, "Our exhibition, 1998. Below it, A newspaper clipping, yellowed with age, detailed the brutal critique of Thorne's most ambitious art show, a show that was meant to be his breakthrough. The review, written by a prominent art critic, scathing and personal, had effectively ended his career. And the woman in the photo, Elena Rodriguez's aunt, a struggling artist who had been Thorne's muse and lover, who had left him after the public humiliation. "It's not just about society, Miles," Reed said, her voice grim. "It's personal. He believes he was betrayed. His art, his love, his very essence. And he's punishing everyone he believes represents that betrayal, that superficiality, that hypocrisy." Elena Rodriguez was the niece of the woman who left him. Mark Henderson, the architect, was the one who bought all of Thorne's remaining failed art pieces and subsequently demolished the gallery where his career ended, replacing it with a soulless, modern structure. Every victim connects, not just symbolically, but personally, to the trauma that broke him. Suddenly, a faint whirring sound came from an old, rusted elevator shaft. Thorne. He was here. He must have been observing them, waiting. "He knew we were coming," Corbin breathed, drawing his weapon. "He's been playing us this whole time." A distorted voice, amplified, echoed from hidden speakers. "Detective Corbin, Agent Reed. You've finally found my studio. But the grand finale, that requires a more suitable venue. A truly public canvas." They raced to the elevator shaft. The heavy steel doors slowly creaked open, revealing nothing but empty space. Thorne was gone. But a new message had appeared, etched in obsidian black pigment on the dusty floor. "The Grand Gallery. Midnight. A final, beautiful truth." "The Grand Gallery," Reed whispered, her eyes wide. "The old Metropolitan Art Museum, where his first and last public exhibition was held." They arrived at the museum just before midnight, the city holding its breath, unaware of the horror about to unfold. The old building, usually a beacon of culture, now loomed like a tomb under the pale moonlight. Inside, Thorne had meticulously prepared his final masterpiece. He had chosen the central hall, where his ill-fated exhibition had once stood. He was there, perched on a scaffold, illuminated by a single powerful spotlight, a figure cloaked in black, his face obscured. Below him, tied to a large empty canvas, was the mayor, gagged and struggling, his face a mask of terror. This was to be Thorne's ultimate statement, the exposure of the city's leader, representing all the hypocrisies he so despised, a public sacrifice. "You're too late," Thorne's voice boomed, chillingly calm. "The truth must be seen. The blood must be drained. The masks must fall." Corbin, driven by a primal need for justice and fueled by the ghosts of his own past, charged forward, ignoring Reed's tactical warnings. He needed to end this. Reed, however, saw the bigger picture. She understood Thorne's narcissistic need for control, for an audience, for his twisted message to be heard. "Adrian," Reed called out, her voice cutting through the vast hall. "You're wrong. This isn't truth. This is just the desperate act of a man who couldn't handle rejection, who couldn't face his own failures." Thorne faltered, his head snapping towards her, momentarily distracted from his ritual. "Silence. You understand nothing. I am revealing the pure form, the void beneath the false light." "No," Reed countered, stepping into the spotlight beside Corbin. "You're just creating a void. You're trying to empty the world of everything you can't control, everything you can't create. You're not an artist, Adrian. You're a vandal, a destroyer. You just want to feel something again, don't you? After everything was taken from you, you wanted to take it from others, to control their final moments, to orchestrate their final beauty." Her words hit him, the precision of her analysis, cutting through his elaborate facade, seemed to shatter his composure. He lunged, not for the mayor, but for Reed, a surgical blade glinting in his hand. Corbin, reacting instinctively, tackled Thorne, sending them both crashing down from the scaffold. The struggle was brutal, silent, desperate. Thorne, fueled by years of repressed rage, fought with a surprising ferocity. Corbin, though weary, found a renewed strength, a fierce determination to protect the innocent and finally put an end to the nightmare. The blade grazed his arm, a searing pain, but he held on, wrestling the weapon away. Finally, with a desperate roar, Corbin pinned Thorn to the ground, his knee on the killer's chest. Thorn's eyes, full of a manic, unseeing intensity, stared up at him. "You don't understand true art," he choked out, blood trickling from his lips. "The ultimate canvas, the perfect void." The mayor was freed. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. The terror was over. The obsidian painter had been unmasked. In the aftermath, the city slowly began to heal. The fear, though still a palpable memory, began to recede. Corbin watched the sunrise from his apartment window, a cup of coffee growing cold in his hand. The scar on his arm was a stark reminder. He felt an exhaustion that went beyond physical, an emptiness that sometimes rivaled the void Thorn had sought to create. Reed stood beside him, her gaze distant. "He wasn't mad, not in the traditional sense, Miles," she said softly. "He was broken, and he chose to break the world around him, piece by agonizing piece, to make sense of his own shattered reality." Corbin nodded, turning to look at her, a rare, shared understanding passing between them. They had walked through the darkest corners of human depravity and emerged, scarred but intact. The obsidian painter was gone, but the shadows he cast would forever linger, a chilling testament to the fragile beauty and terrifying darkness that resided within the human heart. The city had survived, but it would never truly forget the terrible art born from the void.